Welcome to Living Xtreme Hospitality. I'm Michael Brown, your host, and if you're passionate about hospitality, you're in the right place. With over 46 years of industry experience, my mission is simple: elevate hospitality. In this podcast, we'll explore the world of hospitality with industry experts, from organizational tools to personal anecdotes. We'll uncover the secrets of extreme hospitality, but it's not just about us. We want to hear from you. Your input shapes our discussions, fostering a community dedicated to extreme hospitality. Join the conversation and let's make each episode a step towards hospitality excellence. Living extreme hospitality. Taste the difference. Ladies and gentlemen, I am excited about today's guest. And let me ask you, how important do you think human resources are to running a successful business? Does HR work for the benefit of the employee or management? My guest believes in putting the human back in human resources, creating a synergy between them that can drive success to your business. My guest, Sonya Atkins-Goodman, a distinguished business leader and founder of Human Edge Resource Solutions, who has over 30 years of experience in HR. She strategically fosters positive cultures and champions employee engagement, emphasizing servant leadership to drive profitable business. We have entitled this podcast, Living Extreme Hospitality, Fostering Synergy Between Human Resources and Operations. Welcome, Sonya. Thank you guys for tuning in to Living Extreme Hospitality. I am here with a very, very special individual whom I personally have consulted with myself to bring to you a different perspective on living extreme hospitality. As you know, our focus is to raise the bar in the hospitality industry so that we can give our guests the best that we have to offer. What I love about Sonya Atkins, who is the CEO and owner of Human Edge Resource Solutions, she says she's bringing the human back in human resources. The name of our podcast today is called Fostering Synergy Between Human Resources and Operations. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Mrs. Sonya Atkins. Hi, Sonya. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. Thank you so much for having me on your show, on your podcast. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, without a doubt. When I first met you, I was so impressed. I believe it was to an SBDC lecture that you gave, and I've been to
Yes.
many, many of them. But yours was the most impressive because you just gave so much in such a short period of time of yourself, and you were so willing to help. I just saw the passion that you had for what you do. And that's something that in some cases has been missing in human resources. So we're bound at the hip right now. As you know, I'm getting ready to open a restaurant and I'm consulting with you on that. And I believe that you're going to help us to achieve some of our goals when it comes to living extreme hospitality for our guests. So if you would, Sonya, I'd just like to hear a little brief background about yourself and just what inspired you to get into hospitality.
Thank you so very much, Michael, for that question. I've been an HR professional for over 34 years, spent a lot of time in the corporate sector. But a couple of years ago, of course, with things that changed in 2020, and listen to me going back to 1920, with 2020, is that we definitely went through a lot of changes within the way that we conduct our operations. We learned that we can do things remotely, and that definitely changed the landscape in so many ways with the workforce. And I've always had this passion for helping people, and I'm just very passionate about people in general. I've always been very fortunate to be into a role or a platform where I could do that. And it came to me through more of a spiritual journey of, hey, you can either continue to just help this one particular company, or you can take the good bit of what you've learned over the last 30 years in the different industries that you've served and open up your own company and go out there and help, many. So it's really about doing the most good. Where can I do the most good with what experience and knowledge that I've gained, to be able to propel that, to be able to utilize that to help other people. So my passion is both, it's very intersected with my spiritual journey and also my professional journey in what it is that I do. And really that is what drives my passion behind that and drives my compassion for helping businesses to achieve their goals and their objectives and help them to become more efficient, especially when we are dealing with or working with humans because we are a complicated creature. So that's in a nutshell, Michael, a very small tidbit of where, a little bit of that background. My industry experience is very broad, and I've been very fortunate of that. But getting into that hospitality, I look at it as HR is all about hospitality. So I've been in hospitality for over 34 years when you look at it that from that perspective. My customer is the internal employee, the internal workforce, the employee. Now it's of course a little bit more beyond that because it's my entrepreneurial relationships that I have, those client relationships in their teams. But they are where I get to utilize the hospitality in human resources.
Well, that's great. And I hope I got the name of your company right. Did I say that correctly? Human Edge
Yes, you
Resource
did.
Solutions? Okay,
Yes, sir.
good.
Human Edge Resource Solutions. Yes.
Tell me about the name.
So I was coming out of another partnership of another for another HR company, very similar to Human Edge Resource Solutions, and it was an amicable split per se. Uh, it was just that I wanted to focus more on the human resources, whereas my business partner has some experience in some other industries, and that's where he wanted to take his focus. And as I was standing in that at that crossroad, excuse me, just really, and of course, again, Michael, you know me, I don't hide my faith. I am a person of faith and praying about that and just exploring what I could do now with this company that would be solely mine as far as sole ownership. And I wanted to be able to give people an edge. And that's really where it came from is if we say we want to be able to take, well, I'm human resources, I want to be able to be the singular resource. That's why when you look at the name Human Edge Resource Solutions, it's one singular. I want to be that resource for people when it's not this multiple resources because I can bring those resources to those individuals when they need it. But Human Edge being that solution, that ultimate premier solution for businesses. But as I was looking at that name, Human Edge Resource Solutions, it occurred to me the acronym. Now, listen, Michael, if you know anything about HR professionals, we love acronyms. We have even, everything is an acronym in human resources. Even in employment law, you'll find everything. There's so many acronyms for that. So as I looked at that, I saw where it said HERS, and that to me being hers said, Sonya, this is the name. It was like saying, this is your name for your company. Ergo, the acronym hers. It was really pointing me into that direction. And not only did it gave me the edge that I needed. So that's a little bit of the history on the name or how we came about with Human Edge Resource Solutions.
I love it when we do things God's way. He always has a way of giving us signs, giving us alter experiences that help us to understand what our vision, what our uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Not goals, but what our purpose is, and our
Yes.
purpose shines through in our work. And I wrote down from the word human edge, advantage human, advantage human. Um,
Yes.
so when you really think about that, this is a twist from old school human resources. Back in the day, old school human resources was like we're pretending to be for the employee, but we're
Mm-hmm.
really for the big corporate. We're
Right.
really we're going to bring you in our office, and we're going to either discipline you or we're going to
Mm-hmm.
share with you something that we're wanting the direction that the company wants to go in, and maybe you're part
Yes.
of it, maybe you're not, but it's not about that person so per se. It's about what the big giants want in the corporate office. And
Yes.
so
Mm-hmm.
you kind of felt like you're supposed to have a friend, but you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here, I think you're flipping the script and you're saying,
Yes.
listen, Mr. or Mrs. Executive, if you want your
Mm-hmm.
business to survive long term, you have to understand that the most important resource you have are your human resources. And
Absolutely.
if you partner with them, because these generations right now, they don't care all the hardship we've been through in our
Right.
baby boomer years and how we had
Mm-hmm.
to, march to the beat of exactly. They want to know how, why, where. They have a lot more curiosity, and if you want to motivate them
Mm-hmm.
to see your vision. And I love the scripture that Habakkuk 2:2. It says, write the vision down so those that read it can run with it. What
Absolutely.
that
Yes.
didn't mean beat them over the head with the vision. That means they read it, they see it in operation from the top down, and then they
Yes.
run with it.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm stealing your show a little bit here, but I
No, that's
love
okay.
I love
I
John
agree with
C.
everything you're saying.
John C. Maxwell. He says everything rises and falls with leadership, and it's an
Mm-hmm.
inverted pyramid, right? So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, and because I want to hear more from you than from me, let's get into the title, and then we'll get into a few questions. I know that you've seen some of the outlines that we've had, and this is something that we're just going to allow organically to unfold. So fostering synergy, fostering synergy. That in itself says a lot between human resources and operations. And
Mm-hmm.
just give me a brief couple sentences about what that means to you.
When I look at when I think about the synergy, I think about how human resources, our job, first and foremost, kind of to play off of what you were talking about a few moments ago. Yes, gone are the days of where HR had this where they instilled fear. And
Hmm.
that's just not going to work anymore. Okay, that is not what human resources should be about. Human resources really should be about engaging and being an advocate for both the employer and the employee, for about doing the right thing and about being in that role of leadership. And leadership is what? Leadership is influence. So, really uh, being that guide to help influence the executives, the organization, the employees into the direction of the cultural initiatives that align with the values that the company has established. So when I think about synergy with human resources and I think about operations as it relates to that, it's very important for human resources or HR professionals to understand operational goals and the challenges of that business. While when you do that, what happens is it helps the operational leaders to gain more respect for human resources. Therefore, instead of being the HR they run from, you become the HR they run to. And that's really what we want here. And HR, when I think about synergy, it's about helping to support those operational objectives through the initiatives that you set in your, with your HR, with your human resources, whether it's through talent management, whether it's through training development. So that's really about creating those initiatives where they meet with the operational strategies and integrate together. That to me is what creates the synergy that's needed, is really the connection piece, is getting down into the level of it and understanding what your departments need from the top down, and creating your initiatives from an HR perspective, creating your initiatives that support those goals.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned running from as opposed to running to. And that sounds like the lifeline of a business, the bloodline of a
Mm-hmm.
business, because everything, and I like to, like off the cuff, get inspiration that sounds that sounds like something that is true. And I'm thinking about the heart, the heart gets the blood and flows, the blood flows from the heart and has to
Yes.
recycle back in again. So if you consider the operation as the heart and you consider all of the other supporting organs or even the blood, it's keeping everything circulating properly so that
Yes.
everything functions well. And that's probably was a terrible physiological
No, I think
analogy.
no. I think about that, and I think about that as the heart, it being, operations is the heart of a business.
Hmm.
And I also think about what is hospitality. When we think about the relation of hospitality in various industries, whether it's the hospitality in the restaurant industry, in the hotelier industry, healthcare industry, any industry, or any career profession, where does hospitality come to play in that? And the hospitality of what do you do? You think about it when you go to a hotel and they have a concierge and their hospitality. That's what keeps things running. That's what keeps people coming back as
Hmm.
well, right? That's what keeps people coming back to your restaurant. That's what keeps people wanting to do business with you, is how you treat them. And it's just about treating people right. And treating people, when I say bringing the human back to human resources, I've seen a lot in 30 years, 30 plus years, right? I've seen a lot of changes in this career,
You
in
still look
just
like a
my field
baby.
alone. Same, right? And I think about how it started out with, HR was that person in an office that if you needed something, you had to go to them, and they sat behind a desk. And now, even in my own uh, progression of my experience over the last few decades, is that it's get up from behind your desk, go engage with your people, let them know you're not just some figurehead and that you really are there. Be proactive. And what is it that I can do to help? What can I do to help you to meet the goals that you need to meet, whether it's from the employer's perspective or it's from the employee's perspective? So I think about hospitality is really a matter of the heart. And the heart, again, going back to what you said, that is the center of what makes everything else work. That's where I relate that, Michael. It's so very important. It is a heart matter.
Wow. Yeah, and when we think about like as entrepreneurs, thank God he's given us the ability to envision different things. And typically a successful concept is built on a person's calling.
Mhm.
And it's built on, and I'm missing this now. Oh, their why. I remember I was working with a life coach who told me that if your why doesn't make you cry, it's not a good enough, strong enough
Mhm.
why. And I was like,
Yeah.
no way. I've been in the restaurant business for 40 plus years. And you know what? I've had three, four standing ovations in my restaurants, and I've done this and I've done that. And then, and I always say to my staff, your head has to fit back through the door. So don't take it too seriously when people applaud you, and keep a humble attitude and blah, blah, blah. And then I kept saying, where did I get that from? Where did that come from?
Right.
And so one day I told her, I said, well, I remember when I was 6 years old, I was in the kitchen with my mom, and no one would help her cook. And this was a regular thing. And she had a very tumultuous relationship with my dad. But nevertheless, regardless of any challenges that she had, she always cooked with a smile, and she always
Mm,
served a family of nine like if they
mm,
were the kings and queens of Wales. And
yes.
and so I remember saying to myself, why aren't my brothers and sisters helping out like I am? Blah blah blah. That's probably me being, you know, that's my memory, But
Yeah,
anyway, it led to me being a chef.
right.
And I always had this attitude about it. I could have cooked the best roast duckling with an apple brandy sauce on Friday, but on
Hmm.
Saturday I had to go back and do it again and do it even better, possibly. And so I was just trying to figure out why what in me produced that type of level of productivity. And
Hmm.
then she let me help me to go back to my mother,
Hmm.
and then I said, my why is because when I do what I do, I see her and I see her attitude towards hospitality. And so
Yes.
I began to sob. And when I think about it, it even brings tears to my eyes. My point is,
Hmm.
as entrepreneurs, I highly and I've been I have a restaurant consulting business. I've consulted over 50 businesses, and what I say to them is that you have to understand why you do what you do in order to be able to sell it to somebody else, whether it be an employee,
Absolutely.
whether it be,
Absolutely.
the
Hmm.
the guests. And so let's just assume that that's what all of us are. The foundation from which we all launch is a vision, a why, a God-given gift that we're trying to share with people. And
Hmm.
then and then it's and then the next question is, how do you broadcast that? How do you can't do it alone. It can't
Right.
be a one-man show. So how do you
Right.
duplicate that vision and make it sustainable over a long period of time? And so that's why we're here
Yes.
with you, because
Hmm.
you are the key. People like yourself are the key to helping us, because our human nature is to just, you know what, I can do it. Get out the way. I'll do it myself. And I had that itis for a long time, and now I'm learning that if
Yes.
I can't do it all myself. So you've already spoken to one of my questions, which was effectively bridging the gap between human resources and operations to optimize organizational performance and employee satisfaction. Is there anything else you want to add to that before I go to the next question?
No, I think that it's just merely important for HR. Again, I want to emphasize that human resource professionals, it's very important. And it's also important for leaders to partner themselves with HR professionals or HR consultants that want to understand their goals and their unique needs and are supportive in designing initiatives that will help them to get the outcome that they want, which, again, those outcomes could be something that's going to affect the bottom line. I mean, whether it's the workplace culture or it's operational efficiency, training and development, it's very important for HR to have a conversation. Have the conversation and to understand that it's important for leaders to align themselves with HR professionals that are willing to do that.
Awesome. I totally agree. In many businesses, we're operating on pennies in terms of net profit. And so
Okay.
having the right people on the bus, right? The right
Yes.
team is not
Hmm.
just your employees, but it's also your third party or your professional. Most businesses always need a CPA, right? They always need a
Right,
law, legal representation. Um,
right,
Human resources. I mean, how can
hmm
we overlook that?
right.
Um,
So it's very important for businesses, and in my coaching services, whether it's career coaching or it's micro business coaching, going back, you have to know your why. Of course, that's the very basic tool. You need to know what your values are, and then we need to look at developing your infrastructure. And if you don't have a correct infrastructure in place, maybe you've already been operating for a while and the infrastructure you had in place was what you needed. Now you need to right size. Maybe you need to rescale, maybe you need to reskill your current workforce. So that is very important as well to note when it comes to taking a look at how you can achieve that operational excellence as a business. Is you always That's always going to be ever evolving, by the way. With that is but So that piece will always be something that you need to look at. And do we have the the right people, aligned on board with us that have the values that this company represents? And do we have, you know, them trained to be able to do their job? Have I set out the expectations accordingly? So all of that's infrastructure. And those are some things that will change because there will be industry disruptors and different things like that
I love it.
that will
I
come
love,
along.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing about the right sizing and the evolve evolution of a business and its human resources. That's a key takeaway right there. You mentioned we talked about the right people on the bus, and I think you just called it as targeting. So we do a lot to target our the people that we're going after in terms of bringing in to
Mhm.
our customers. Buyer personas, we call it, right? So in our
Yes.
business, I have three buyer personas, they're avatars, and they represent three different generations. And so I know where these generations are going to look for food. I know where they're going to play, how many times a week they eat, so on and so forth, right?
Right.
So let's talk about how to target the right person in your organization. What are some of the things that
Great.
we can do to make sure that we have the right people on the bus?
I am so glad you asked this question because this is absolutely one of my favorite topics to address. Okay. And I'm going to go back to the why, but I'm going to frame it like this. In order for you to get the right people on the bus, you've got to know who you are as an organization first. And I'm not talking about what widget, product, or service that you're selling, that you're promoting externally, because that's your external customer. You have some internal people that need to buy into your vision, into your brand, and into your values. So you need to have, just like a lot of companies have a mission statement, and generally that mission statement says, oh, hey, this is what we're going, this is, what we want to be and how we're going to be it and what the outcome is that's going to happen when we do that. And they're talking more externally, but I'm talking more the internal employer brand. And then really having those values. So who are you as an organization first is who you need to identify, because it's then and only then will you be able to start utilizing those values as a GPS, as a guide to help you navigate what types, what individuals or what roles that you need to bring into your infrastructure and who needs to fill those roles. A lot of companies now are looking to hire based on those, values. And yes, there'll always be a need for certain educational requirements, but now what we're seeing as a trend as well in the workforce trends is that it's more based on the experience and skills, your attitude, your values, because that's also what's important to the workforce. That's what they're looking for as well. What kind of values do you represent as an organization? Not just what you're selling, but who are you? Almost as if that organization was this human themselves, right? With who they are. So that's very important to know who you are, create an employer brand statement, create your values, and that is step one. Then you want to base all of your processes, all of your HR processes that may help you with that piece of that talent acquisition piece. For example, your interviews. Your interviews now are going to have this values-based platform when you're interviewing those individuals so that you marry up. Do they align with your core values of your organization? Because let's face it, at the end of the day, I can't teach you certain things. You already come to the workforce with some of these things. I can teach you, and I'm not saying that people cannot be reformed, but it takes that person needing to be willing to meet you to do it, and the organization being willing to do it. But that's step one, and that's just the very basic step. That's where when I have uh, companies that come to me with that same kind of question, they're like, Sonya, what can we do about this? Hey, we have high turnover. We can't seem to find anyone. Okay, well, let's take a look at this. Before we even start saying, should you rescale or reskill and go from there, do you know who you are? And if you know who you are and you know what your values are as an organization, have you communicated that effectively to your current workforce? And how are you projecting that in every process that you build from a people management standpoint? So it's something I'm very passionate about because, Michael, I've lived this. I've worked in an industry that in my corporate years, I worked in an industry that is noted for having a high turnover. We're talking 90 to 95% turnover rate in this industry alone, and that's the automotive industry. And there's just a revolving door, basically. And we took initiatives in the employer branding initiatives and those employer values, and then started building HR initiatives around that so that we could lower those turnover rates. And every HR professional was responsible for their assigned locations. And we went from 95% turnover in some of those locations to well below 25%. And that's significant. Do you know how much of a savings that is and how much that affects the bottom line? Because when you have turnover, and I know I'm kind of sidebarring this, a little bit, but it's still a very important factor because as entrepreneurs, and we want to be people centric, it's still very important for us to understand how much is this costing us? How much impact is this going to have? Every time you lose someone and an employee and you have to replace that person to train them up to get them to where now you're having an ROI on them, you're looking at 150% on an average of what their salary was when they left. That's significant.
This is such exciting information, and I want to take a quick break so we can come back and get to more of what Sonya is sharing with us in regards to having the right people on the bus. So we'll be right back. Okay, folks, we hope you enjoyed part one of Living Xtreme Hospitality, fostering synergy between human resources and operations. Stay tuned for part two, where we continue to unravel this topic. So please check in next Monday for part two of this groundbreaking episode. Thank you for joining us today. It's a wrap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Living Xtreme Hospitality. Taste the difference.